Hey everyone, my name is Tori. I'm a photographer based in Seattle, back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about getting more pleasing photos from your digital camera. In my case, that happens to be with Sony, but I believe that this video will be applicable with any brand that you shoot on. Specifically, we're going to be talking about a film emulation pack from Cobalt-Image. So a little bit more about me. I'm coming up on basically a year of shooting almost exclusively film. I switched over last July and didn't really look back, but I am experiencing more of a need in my business lately to offer both film and digital, to be a little bit more of a hybrid shooter. Not everybody has the budget for film, which I totally understand. I'd love to shoot 5 packs of Portra every time I go out with someone or shoot with a brand, for example. But for one, that's not doable for me to just cover that cost all the time, and a lot of times for the people I'm shooting with, that's going to get a little bit steep for them too. When you have your base services covered and then you also on the invoice include all of the film, it can just get a little bit more expensive pretty quickly. So there's been more of a need for me to offer both film and digital lately, but that comes with the challenges of getting those two to play well with each other, getting your digital photos to at least look similar enough and to be part of your own branding. So with that came kind of researching some of the offerings on the market, and I did stumble across Cobalt-Image and I liked their very scientific approach, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give this a try. I haven't bought a preset pack in forever, but I reached out to them over DM and they were interested on doing a video with me, allowing me to test some of their preset packs. And I've gotten the chance to use the presets on quite a few images and projects lately. I feel like I've tested it out enough to know if it works or doesn't work for me, and I am happy to say that I've been using them as the base preset with a lot of tweaking on every digital shot I've taken in maybe the last month or two. So I did mention that I've been shooting on Sony for digital. I'm still rocking the A7R III. I switched to Sony back in a few years ago when I was still shooting landscape photography, but I do have plans to switch to Fuji sometime in the future. My dream is to hop over to medium format. I think that would be a little bit more in line with how I see my portfolio evolving over time, especially being primarily a film shooter, but for now we need some more filmic kind of tones out of the Sony side of things.
You sure about that?
I think that is doable. I'm going to show you some images. Maybe you can decide if I'm full of it or not, but I'm liking what I'm getting out of that setup right now. It's working for me until I make the switch over. Now, one thing with these presets that I have noticed is that they do differ from some other popular presets on the market in that they really capture that very clean base set of basically shifts and tones to popular film stocks like Portra. One thing that you'll realize if you start shooting a lot of film is that you could have 10 photographers all shoot Kodak Portra 400 and they would all expose the film differently. They'd all have different setups, they'd all have different lenses, they'd all have different preferences for exposure, they'd all have different labs. The labs would be vastly different in how they would color correct. You'd have different machines, you'd have different scanners.
Approximately 10 hours later.
Images, different amounts of contrast, different color shifts, all of that would be pretty highly variable, all with the same film stock. I follow a lot of film photographers and I will tell you that all their stuff looks a little different, which is part of the beauty of it. I love that about film. It all looks like film, but it all looks unique. I think Cobalt-Image did a great job to still take that filmic look and customize it to our taste, but give us a really strong starting point. So I want to get into some of the images and show you what I mean by that. Okay, here's a few quick examples of before and afters of portraits in interior spaces. So let's just kind of get started here. This is the image straight out of camera with the Sony generic ICC profile. So this is just the Sony RAW file. And if we flick over to this after version, all that has been done to this, there has been no other edits except for the ICC profile has been changed to Cobalt Elite Kodak Portra 800 balanced. The differences between the before and after are very clearly visible. I hope you guys can see that on the screen recording, but they're not overpowering. And this is what I wanted from a preset pack. I wanted something that gave me a starting point that wasn't quite as like digital looking. Sony files can be kind of notorious for being like almost too much of a blank slate at times, to where you just want to start somewhere that gets you a little further down the road of your editing journey and not have to do so much of the grunt work. So if I just flick between the before and after, so this is no adjustments, I think a little bit of an exposure bump, but they both have the exposure bump. So the only differences are the Cobalt-Image Kodak Portra 160, and this is gonna be the non-balanced. The non-balanced is gonna have a little bit more like split toning or color shifts in the shadows and highlights. So this is like a more neutral, cleaner look, and you can see as I toggle between the non-balanced and balanced, you get more of that like classic kind of like highlight and shadow split toning going on. As we jump to one more example, here's a different kind of set of colors to mess with. And here's our Sony RAW file with no adjustments. This is just the generic profile. And then if we go over here, we got our Portra 400 balanced. And then if I tick over one more time, I threw in for you guys the 800 balanced. So just a quick little comparison of the Sony profile, Portra 400, Portra 800. This isn't a comprehensive video, this isn't a deep dive, that would take a lot longer. There's lots I could cover. Definitely let me know in the comments if you want me to go into more detail on how to really utilize these presets, because for me, I definitely use these as a starting point. And sometimes I'm really happy with that starting point and I don't have to do much of anything. And other times with trickier lighting or subject matter or just my stylistic preferences, I go pretty deep into Capture One to customize the look. And that's perfect because you get the ICC profile for that quick conversion, where you improve upon the color kind of, I guess you could say almost color science of your RAW files. And then you go in and you can do really robust editing in Capture One or Lightroom for that matter, followed by Photoshop or even other plugins. So there's so much you can do, and this is just like that first part of the color pipeline. But let's get into this real quick. I'm gonna show you these two portraits. Here's the before, here's the after. Really nice conversion. This after is gonna be your Portra 800 balanced. I think that works really well. You got some great kind of like film tones going on, more warm, more kind of lush. Got nice skin tone, but still not too heavy. And you know, you could back off on this. You could even take the saturation down, right? Now it's more subtle. It's so customizable, and that's what I love about this preset pack. So the next example, here's our generic Sony profile. We got Kodak Portra 400 balanced. We got 800 balanced, and then we got Portra 160 non-balanced. So three pretty different looks. So those are two quick examples of some outdoor lighting. I've tested this preset pack on a lot more than these two images with outdoor lighting. We just don't have time to get into, 24 photos, but once again, let me know if you want me to cover more of this stuff in the future sometime. But let's go ahead and get over to a landscape photo or two and then close this out. Okay, let's take a look at two quick road trip photos. So here's our first image. Once again, this is just the Sony RAW file, generic profile. If we go here, this is the Kodak Portra 800 non-balanced. And this time I did add a little bit of adjustments, but I just want to show you guys how quickly you can get kind of honestly a little bit boring RAW file to look more nostalgic, a little bit more memorable, but still not too stylized. Here's a third version. That is going to be the 800 balanced. So in this one we have the non-balanced, and this one we have the balanced. and in this one we have a little bit less in the develop tab. But it's just so nice to get really quick versions of a little bit more like filmic of a look for even stuff like a road trip or a sunrise, not just portraiture. So let's go to one more example really quick here. Here is our base profile, and then a quick Portra 400 balanced. And once again, just a little bit easier on the eyes, you know? Really clean. You could go so many different directions from here, but what a cool starting point. And I just feel like this preset pack continues to be really versatile for me. Like going back through old photos has been a lot of fun, and not having to work very hard to get a nice base look. So if you made it to this part of the video, thanks for sticking around. I think this is the first time on the channel that I've covered anything with digital photography, but I know that film is amazing, but it's not always the most practical, and a lot of times you're going to be on jobs that you can't necessarily put it into the deliverables. So it's always good to have a workaround, to have a way to be able to grab your digital camera and still get some work done, still get, still improve your photographic eyes, still work with people, still work with brands. I think that's really valuable. And it's something that I'm going to be continuously working on, that workflow. I'm not ignoring that, and I know that a lot of you aren't either, but the channel will definitely still be mostly film photography related. But let me know, what do you think of like covering some more digital photography on the channel? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I think it's time to wrap it up. Go ahead and like this video if it was helpful for you. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.